Hello everyone and welcome to the final event of the games, a mountaineering marathon. Runners will be competing against one another in a race to the peak of Celeste Mountain. For those unfamiliar with the game, Celeste is an indie platforming title which sees you take control of Madeline, a young woman determined to scale the immense Celeste Mountain, overcoming obstacles both physical and emotional as she comes to grips with her own anxiety and self-doubt. Runners will be completing an any % run of the game, which means they'll be opening a brand new file, starting from the prologue, and climbing as fast as they can until they reach the summit over 3,000 meters above. These runs will utilize the in-game timer, which is always running when in a level, even when the game is paused, but won't run when in the level select. Since starting each level relies on human input, this does mean the runs will be slightly desynced from one another, but will remain close enough for the race and the runner's position relative to each other to still make sense. And joining me for commentary on this final event, someone who knows a lot more about Celeste than I do. Everyone, give a round for Steve.
Hello everybody, my name is Steve, also known as Esaevian. I have done a number of 80% runs of this game, and I'm excited to see what our runners will be bringing to us today for tips and tricks for getting all the way up Celeste Mountain.
Excellent. Now, in your experience, do you have an idea of like what a rough time for like an early or amateur speedrunner might get on this game versus like a blind speedrun with no real experience?
Yeah, so very typically, like if you have some experience with the game but no speedrunning experience, it can very easily get to about an hour and a half for a first-time speedrun, and then just with a few more runs after that, getting some practice under your belt, getting to about an hour, even just under an hour, which is where my personal best stands, is very easy to achieve.
Excellent, cool. And any thoughts about like a blind speedrunner? Like I know that would probably depend a lot on kind of your own, platforming skills in general, how quickly you can kind of get acclimated to a game, but is there kind of like a range that you've seen for like first timers with the game?
Yeah, definitely for first timers. Definitely a first run will be several hours, maybe 2 to 3 hours to get through the any % run of the game, and then just with subsequent runs, you can get that to an hour and a half, maybe even an hour and 15 minutes.
Excellent. All right, cool. Well, so for this event, let's introduce our participants for the marathon. In the top left corner, you'll be seeing me, representing Imperium Ludum. I'm Rick. On the bottom left, you'll be seeing CJ, representing the Daisy Baby Bitch territory. On the bottom right, you'll be seeing José of Tierra de los Hermanos 𝗚𝗚. And there is no runner for this event from 𝗚𝗚𝗘𝗦. We will have 3 participants in this race. And as we begin, we see our participants typing in their names to get their files started. In just a moment, their adventure up Celeste Mountain will begin. And we're off. So my run, we're skipping right past the little opening segment, though it would have been nice to just kind of take the just breathe. I think the anxiety of a speedrun race, especially one... So Celeste has been really fine-tuned over the years, has it not?
Definitely. So as, people have been discovering speedrun tricks, the actual developers of the game have been really encouraging that, and they're speedrunners themselves, so they actually go through and have optimized the game to be very well speedrunnable and replicatable.
Excellent. I feel like there's a little bit of acknowledgement of that even within the game itself, with the Farewell DLC having its own introduction of the wave dash technique, or at least the version of wave dashing that they have in Celeste, which up until that point was kind of more of a speedrunning trick than it was like an official, maneuver, I guess, that was explicitly shown in the game.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of support from the developers on that. Some other speedrunning tricks like wall bouncing, which we may see later in this run, are actually taught later in some of the more difficult versions of these levels, which we may not be seeing in this run. Sorry.
No, that's totally fine. So a couple things right off the bat here. Yes, I did definitely embarrass myself right off the bat by taking a quick death in literally the first real room of the game. Here I am trying to be fancy with my wave dashes, and I literally sail right over the first platform into the second pit. So that's a really good start to the game for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It takes a lot of practice to know exactly when to wave dash and when not to, and when to sort of reverse and kind of go back.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think so. There's a couple differences that I'd want to point out between the runs that you'll be expecting from myself on the top left and Jose on the bottom right. For one, you can see in the middle here we have this little progress bar, which I've added in there, which I think it's a nice way of being able to tell kind of where everyone is relative to one another. Unless you have these, courses memorized, which, anyone that's watching who does do speedrunning for this game probably will, at least to some extent, have, like, these maps relatively well memorized. But anyone who's coming in without that knowledge, all of these rooms may as well be next to any other room in the level. There's not a ton to distinguish them from one another until the summit. So having that at least gives you a good idea of where everyone is relative to each other. But so notably, I think there were two big differences, I think, or there was a big difference between the runs that Jose and I are going to be putting up here. I definitely came at this from an angle of just, I know at least vaguely how to do the wave dashes. I'm a pretty quick platformer in general, and I am a big fan of just figuring out routes kind of on the fly. Jose also, I think for both of us, this was our first real attempt at doing a full speed run. Both of us had some of segments, through practice, but neither of us had really done a full-sized speed run of this before. So Jose had also taken some time to look at a few tips and tricks from the best from speedrunners. I don't know the names of some of these techniques, but you can see Jose doing what I wound up internalizing as stone skipping. That kind of wave dash diagonally into the ground to then skip back up.
It's one of the basic ways to start your hyper dash to actually go through. And then I'm not sure if you saw toward the end of the first level, Jose actually employed a trick with some spike jumps. In this game, you can actually see spikes don't actually hurt you unless you are moving toward them. So you can actually get some wall jumps off of spikes as long as you're moving in the same direction that they're pointing. So there's actually a way to skip a portion of the end of the first level to get through that a little bit faster.
Interesting. See, I had definitely encountered I had streamed this game before, I think maybe 2 years ago. And I definitely once or twice encountered a couple instances where I would land what would seem to be directly into spikes or kind of grab onto the wall right on the corner of spikes and not actually die. I think that's kind of a related element. There's a little bit of a grace there.
Yeah. The game gives you.
There's definitely I've definitely seen a couple folks pull off some speedrun techniques that exploit that pretty thoroughly. A lot of jumping off of corners and things to avoid the spikes.
And there's a good amount of hitbox manipulation as well. We'll see that particularly in level 3, which we'll be getting into shortly. There's a very difficult trick called the demo dash, which I can walk through when we get there. I'm not sure if we'll be seeing that from our runners today.
Okay.
But it's a very interesting trick to skip a good portion of that level, actually.
All right. So we've got Jose currently running from Battlein, or I guess technically. She doesn't really have a canonical name. It's part of me, right?
Part of you, yeah.
Yeah, and then Battlein is kind of the nickname that she got unofficially, and then it got used in Towerfall, I believe.
Yes, what it is, yes. I know there was some fighting game. Or not fighting game, but competitive
kind of
game.
Like an arena, like archery battle. I don't know what that would be, right? It's a tiny arena fighting game, I guess. And so in my run, also now on the run from part of you, part of me. We've got CJ
is on the second to last room of level 1, so he's still making his way through.
Definitely, if you're going for the winged golden strawberry, this room is torture. The one that CJ's in right now. My final stream with Celeste was spent, among other things, going for the flying golden strawberry, and I think I spent a good 20-30 minutes just in this room. It's so very specific, the jumps you need there. Let's see. So it looks like Jose is also on his way, just about done.
Has escaped the trail of Battleins following them, and is just making their way to the end of the dream sequence.
There we go. Over to the phone booth to wake up and get our little junior version of the stage. All right. As CJ is coming out of the Forsaken City and into the old site. All right. It's interesting to see Jose in the waking version of the old site while I'm in the same screens of the dream.
Definitely dream parallels there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it was a little bit more obvious earlier. So right now Jose has got a couple room lead on me right now. The flags are you'll notice anytime we get close together, that the Tierra de los Hermanos hook flag is kind of layered on top of the Imperium Ludum flag. Whoever's in the lead is just layered on top. Just makes it a little clearer who's in the lead when anyone's like close together.
Mm-hmm.
All right, as we
And
head
now we're
into
on
the
level
Celestial
3,
Resort,
the old mansion.
This one seems to be just everyone's. I wouldn't say nightmare exactly, but it seems like nobody really likes the resort.
Yeah, this level is all about cycles and timing, and it's difficult to get the timing right if you're trying to go through as fast as possible.
Yeah. Especially since, like you're saying with the cycles, so many of the enemies in this level, I guess all of the enemies really, are on these little cycles where if you fall off of your timing even a little bit, it just completely messes with the pace of the rest of the room.
Mm-hmm. And one interesting thing is that, so a lot of speedrunners have a route to go through one of these rooms with these cycles, but they have to actually come up with a alternate route if they die, because sometimes the cycles will be different if they start in this room versus walking into the room.
Yeah,
so a death will typically cause them to actually have to employ different strategies.
Yep, I definitely noticed that. Like, I died in a couple rooms, Jose died in a couple rooms. I noticed that it would seem like, all right, first time through a room, you got this thing, you kind of make it maybe halfway through, take a death that you weren't expecting. It's like, all right, fine. You try to take the same pace, and you're dying immediately just because you're so used to what you just did a moment ago.
Exactly.
All right. I also, I'll admit, during my own run, I forgot that and I don't know the official names for any of these, but the fuzz that becomes the kind of dark mold that kills you doesn't actually trigger until you leave the spot that it's on.
This actually was an older version of that, did actually activate on a timer.
Oh, really?
And they decided to change it to just activate when you leave. That fuzzy wall will become fuzzy again.
Interesting. Was that a Celeste Classic thing, or was that like a version 1.1?
I believe that was a version 1 thing. I don't sure if the fuzzies were actually in Celeste Classic.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
Speaking of Celeste Classic, we do actually... we probably will not see this in the speedrun, but there is a secret computer in this level where you can actually play a version of Celeste Classic baked into this game, which is a pretty cool inclusion by the developers.
Now, is it an actual Pico 8 version of the game, or is it just kind of a like pretend version of Pico 8 that's...
I'm not sure in the actual development. I mean, I believe it's supposed to like fairly well emulate the Pico 8, but I'm not sure if it's actually having a Pico 8 engine inside of this code.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think the room that it takes to get there we don't even see in anyone's runs here, since it's kind of out of the way from... I guess you kind of return. You return from one of the 3 paths on like the left side of the room that leads to the computer, but there's no reason to go to the right at all.
Exactly. Looks like Jose is currently in our big mess room. Going to talk to...
Has there been any...
starting those 3 paths to clean up.
Are you aware of like any meta as far as this room, like which paths are the optimal ones to take and when?
There are definitely optimal paths. It's been a while since I've run. I believe Jose is kind of on the path that I would take, which is top, then bottom, then middle.
Okay.
That may have changed since I've done my runs, so that may not be the actual optimal path, but it is a good path, I will say.
Cool. It's definitely one of those things that's interesting. So for anyone who's not familiar with the game, the kind of point of this middle chunk of the Celestial Resort is you've got all this junk and clutter everywhere. You've got the purple kind of bedding clutter, you've got green and blue, which appears to be like books, and then you've got brown, which is just kind of crates. And as you go through these 3 other paths, you clean out all of one type of that clutter, as Jose just did. He got rid of all the books. So now as you go through the other 2 paths, all of the green and blue book clutter is gone, but the beddings and the crates are still there. So each path gets progressively, I wouldn't say easier, but certainly cleaner. There seem to be some that are actually easier if you do them earlier.
Yeah, definitely. It does change. It will change the pathing no matter what of each level. So if you do them in a different order, you might actually have to have a different strategy to get through. Gotcha.
As CJ is now getting further into the battle-in section with 3 battle-ins behind. Ooh, unfortunate little death right there.
The one very good thing about this game is that if you ever die, you're always sent back, not too far back, just to the beginning of the room, and the rooms are never too long. It really encourages you to kind of just keep trying and keep getting that one part perfect. Absolutely,
yeah. It's actually that was one of the concerns for CJ going in, was like how many lives do I get? What's like the worst? Like am I going to have to like do whole levels again? It's like, no, you're never going to have to do whole levels again. You're going to get sent back to the beginning of whatever room you're in. You're never going to get penalized that hard because the game is tough, especially for first-time experience. They throw a lot of stuff at you, none of which is impossible by any means, but it's definitely like the difficulty does scale pretty well.
Definitely. And partly to address that, the developers have actually added in an assist mode, which I don't believe any of the runners are running on for this run. But it does add different tricks like invincibility or infinite stamina that just make it easier to kind of get through the game, so you can actually experience the whole story and all of the levels.
Nice. There's definitely a couple spots, especially near the summit, where stamina starts to really come into play, even if you're pretty experienced with the game.
Definitely. I
think... oh god, I'm going to get the number wrong, but like flag 14 maybe is one where you are more or less required with it, like unless you do some serious like strats on it, that you're pretty well going to run out of stamina or at least start blinking on your way to the next flag.
Definitely. Managing a stamina is always very important.
Jose getting the key, moving on to the next portion of the stage, as it looks like I'm about to get into the third path of the messy room.
So you'd be having a little bit of trouble finding the entrance to that last path, or finding the 𝗚𝗔𝗚𝗘𝗦.
Oh yeah,
the keeper of the mansion.
I think both Jose and I wound up confusing where he was for one of the two for one of the points we have to find him. In the first time he's in the center. I think the second time he's in the bottom left, and the third time he's in the top right. I want to say Jose went for the top second, and I went for the bottom third, which wound up losing us both a little bit of time there.
Definitely. This might be a good time to start talking about hitboxes and some of the technique I talked about before called the demo dash.
Absolutely.
If you see right after this cutscene in Jose's screen, there's a big wall of these fuzzy creatures. It turns out that the hitboxes for them are individual circles that are about 4 pixels apart. It also turns out that when you duck and dash in midair, your hitbox is also 4 pixels tall. So if you're very, very precise, you can actually dash through a wall of fuzzies and actually avoid this whole section about getting the key and coming back up and save a good 30 seconds. But that's incredibly precise. Looks like Jose did not opt to do that. So went for the safer route.
As kind of a middle ground strategy, I'm trying to remember whether or not this is the case. So you can certainly clarify, but if you collect a key, I'm relatively sure if you die, you go back to the start of the room, but still retain the key.
But you still have the key.
So you could arguably...
That's also a trick. Once you get the key, you hit start over, you go back to the start of the room.
Yeah, and you just have the key at the entrance. It didn't occur to me till after my run, where I was like, wait a second, hang on.
Yeah.
That might have been an opportunity.
Just make sure you don't do that when you're going for the golden strawberry. I've seen some runners do that by accident, just by habit.
Oh, no. And then you get back to the start of the whole level. Oh, God.
Yep.
Yeah, whenever you're going for golden strawberry... checkpoints do no longer count when you've got the golden strawberry in hand. All right, we've got 𝗚𝗔𝗚𝗘𝗦's ghost on Jose's side of things.
A sort of one of the closest things this game will call to a boss. This chase sequence.
Yeah, there's this
to get to the end of the mansion.
There's this here, and then there's the encounter with Battlein in Reflection that are about the closest you really get to boss encounters in this game. It can be pretty tricky, too, because, even more so than the rhythm of the little fuzzies, 𝗚𝗔𝗚𝗘𝗦's ghost definitely, throws you off if you die in the level, since the timing changes for him, too. Some of these jumps...
You always dash where you are at a certain point, and you just have to move out of the way.
Yep.
But if you're falling through the air, you might not be able to move.
As Jose just kind of showed there, yeah. Sometimes you just have to dash straight down and kind of plant yourself for another attempt.
Exactly.
Oh, nice. Actually, most of that horizontally, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I feel like it's definitely one that's more geared to be done diagonally, but if you can just get it right, it's definitely a little bit faster going straight across.
Yeah, if you start off with the hyper dash, you can actually get a good amount of momentum to keep going.
Absolutely, yeah.
On the bottom left, looks like CJ has escaped all the Battleins and is making his way to the end of the dream sequence.
Excellent. And those blocks that you can pass through have a lot of interesting properties to them that I don't think anything else in the game really does. So you get your dash back once you pass through them. You can also kind of jump out of the block.
Definitely.
In order to get a ton of extra momentum.
Yeah, jumping, you can even do a sort of dash jump out of that block as well to kind of get even more momentum.
Oh, interesting.
So there are definitely some parts later in level 7 when we kind of come back to some of these mechanics where you can get a lot of speed out of those green blocks.
Gotcha. CJ waking up as Jose exits the Celestial Resort and starts making his way over to the Golden Ridge. So I'm making my way over, past the messy room on my way to meet up with Oshiro and trigger the ghost event. Oh, and actually, here we are. Now, the Golden Ridge is one that's kind of interesting. So I didn't spend like any real time watching speedruns myself going into this. And I'd be very curious to see how the top speedrunners deal with the windy sections of this, because obviously, when you're dashing, you're mostly negating the effects of the wind, but if you're standing still at all, and there's a couple spots where you kind of still need to, the wind is really just kind of this force you can't avoid otherwise. I'd be curious to see.
It's kind of considered one of the more annoying mechanics to deal with in this game.
Yeah.
Just having to fight the wind and trying to get to where you want to go. Your dash, while it may negate the wind, is still shorter than you would expect, so you still have to manage that as well.
Interesting. I assume, is it common to do, I guess, wave dashes or hyper dashes and then using that replenished dash to like go into the ground to start it again? Like, can those be chained together in like a meaningful way?
They usually can be. Sometimes the wind will actually hurt your ability to kind of get back up in the air to do that again, though. So it's kind of difficult to maintain. And we also have the introduction of the blue bubbles.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That will actually launch you in a short distance in a certain direction.
We'll be seeing in was it the Mirror Temple, I think, the red bubbles?
Yes.
Which go until you hit something or you dash out of them. Right. We
have these directional blocks as well.
Yeah, these ones are...
Some of them are able to be manipulated and steered in certain directions that let you reach new heights.
There's definitely a lot of interesting kind of... I feel like the Golden Ridge is probably the most precisely laid out stage in the game, especially due to like just how the wind functions. It seems like it's very carefully laid out, where there's obviously skips and things you can do, but it seems like there's fewer ways to exploit it generally in this level than most of the others.
Definitely. There are some tricks that you can do with some of these blocks to kind of get some reverse dashes off of them before they actually hit their destination, so you can kind of build up some momentum. So that's always interesting. And then Jose actually just ran into a crumbling block, which will crumble as soon as you're on top of it, though if you hit the side of it, it doesn't start to crumble immediately, so it gives you a little bit of extra time if you want to just hit the side of one of those crumbling platforms.
Grab that and then either strategize or wait out the wind changes, give yourself an extra boost up to somewhere else. While I'm over in the Celestial Resort, I had a lot of trouble with this room. I don't know what it was. This is probably the worst room for me in my entire run. Something about just because there's... Oh, geez, and right at the end there, too.
Right at the end, yeah.
Because there's about a dozen or so separate cycling enemies in addition to Oshiro's ghost. And just, if you fall off of that rhythm, it really does punish you in this
Definitely.
room in particular.
And it is one of the longest rooms that any player has encountered so far in the game, so it's just... It ends up being a bit of a grueling task to get through to the end.
Oh, boy.
Right there.
Barely keeping it together for that. We're out of the Celestial Resort at long last. Yeah, I think that was that is the worst room that I put up in my run at the very least. Yeah, definitely a rough one as I'm kind of taking a quick breath before going into the next level. And like I mentioned in the intro as well, when you're in the level select, the in-game timer is not running, so it is a good opportunity to take a breath, take a bathroom break, whatever you need to do. But it does also mean that as we're doing this, as you can see, the timers on the 3 screens are all off by a bit here and there. So if 2 people are in the same room at the same time, it's not necessarily that they're at the same point, like at the same time, but it's, a pretty good approximation.
Pretty close. Yeah, definitely.
As we can see, too, Jose's built up a pretty decent lead, about 60% of an entire stage ahead. And there's not a huge number of opportunities to gain back to gain back ground in this level at least, since the wind is such a limiting factor.
Some of the later levels definitely do have some large skips if our runners know about them to actually save a lot of time. So we'll see what will happen with those.
We have the flying snowballs on Jose's side of things. A nice little reminder of bullet bills from old Mario games.
That's true. It's similar mechanics to 𝗚𝗔𝗓, where they will always target where you are when they launch. You just have to move out of the way.
And I believe they come at regular intervals until you get, to that last 20% of the screen or so. So you can definitely time your jumps in anticipation of them so that you can avoid having to deal with them much at all. But as you can see there, sometimes it doesn't quite time out the way we're looking for.
And the snowballs are definitely, because of their timing mechanics, one of those things you have to watch out for when you die in that same room, because they'll be on a slightly different timing than you would have expected when you first come in.
Yeah. It's interesting, too. So similar to 𝗚𝗔𝗓, they also work as kind of platforming tools if you can time it correctly. So I could certainly imagine some folks in the more intense speedrunning side are able to pull off some really impressive chains utilizing those as platforms.
Definitely, it's very helpful. He also gave you your dash back, any sort of platform benefit you still get from those snowballs too.
Nice. CJ currently in the what is there a name for those kind of triggers? I've always thought of them as shields, I guess.
I've always referred to them as coins or buttons.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's an actual official term for them.
Nice. Because there's definitely a few specific rooms in the game that feature generally 4 or 5 of those that tend to be some of the trickier ones. I think that's the first legitimately kind of tricky one, just because the moving bumper platforms are constantly swaying back and forth. You got 4 of them. You have just the single jump at the time.
Yeah, it's rather difficult. And toward the end of Golden Ridge, Jose is moving into Mirror Temple right now. There was actually a slight mishap where Jose went to skip the cutscene, but the menu had not yet changed. They accidentally retried that last room.
Oh, yes.
So you have to be careful. You have to have your timing right if you want to get the cutscene skip on the right timing.
Thankfully, that's among the shortest screens in the game, of the ending.
So you take a couple steps and you're done.
Exactly, yeah. So, technically, I guess a couple seconds lost there, but nothing too tragic. Certainly not as bad as some of the screens in this game can be in terms of how far you have to get before it qualifies as in the closing cutscene.
And so we also have Jose using one of our red bubbles, which take you as far as they possibly can until you either hit a wall or dash out of them.
Yep. And this room being kind of the tutorial for the fact that you will have to dash out of some of them. Going up and hitting that button, which I think unlocks this wall down here to the right.
Yeah, that button definitely unlocks an extra collectible, I believe a strawberry, which is actually not quite necessary for the 90% run, but a button hit is a button earned.
I was a little confused when I saw that, because I was like, wait, but nothing in this room actually moved, so I wound up looking it up after the fact, oh, okay, so that wasn't like a skip or anything, it was just, just a thing that happened to be there.
Yeah.
All right. Mirror Temple was definitely one that I had to take some time in practice to actually figure out where I was going, because it's just so sprawling. The darkness really makes it tough to see where you're headed unless you know ahead of time where things are laid out. And as we're seeing here, Jose entering this long vertical chamber, but opting instead to head off to this little zone over here.
Here we go. He's sneaking back to kind of chain some hyperdashes together to actually skip a key.
Yes.
An intended skip that you don't actually need the key to get through that part of the room.
Yeah, but I want to say that saves about 6 rooms. I don't know how much time it would save, but it would have to be around a minute or so, or at least close to a minute. Because the normal path involves you, I want to say, going up, and then you have to go in kind of a loop, a little tight loop of rooms to collect your key, and then back down and around, and that can be pretty time-consuming.
Definitely.
All right, so we got one of the longer rooms in the game, at least outside of the B and C sides that Jose's in right now.
And also, speaking of B sides, there's actually an interesting sort of strategy that some other speedrunners might take is that, so in order to get to the B side of a level, you need to find a cassette in what's the normal version or the A side to access the B side. However, if you complete the B side of a level, say level 5, it will actually unlock the next level in the normal run. So some of the more professional speedrunners have actually found that it is faster to complete 5B, find the cassette and then complete all of 5B than actually it is to just complete all of 5A. And then that will actually unlock level 6 for them. So you may not be seeing that on this run, but that's a very interesting thing that some of the more high-end speedrunners will do.
Interesting. I hadn't even considered that as a possibility. Just because the B run, the B sides are generally a lot tougher than the A sides, and the C sides are brutal. We had mentioned before that it's if you die, it's not that big a deal. You go back to the start of the room, but the C sides, I want to say, are 3 rooms.
All
of the C sides are
3 very difficult rooms.
Yeah. So if you die, then you could be sent back. I mean, if it's your first time, you could be sent back 20 minutes. It's so devastating. But
and
fortunately,
definitely to pull off that B-side trick, you need to know some of the tricks in the B-side as well to skip a lot of that.
Yeah.
So it's very, kind of professionals only, or it takes a lot of practice to get there.
Yeah, it definitely seems like something that you'd want to practice a couple times before trying to take it out for a one and done kind of speed run where you don't really have the opportunity to go back and restart the runs. Because high risk but high reward. So
definitely.
All right, so we got CJ still in the Celestial Resort. I believe he's on his second path here. We've got Jose now dealing with our...
in the Dark Temple, the dark version of the Mirror Temple.
Right. As I get myself over to our first key block in the Mirror Temple.
We have sort of these... I'm not sure that they actually have a name. These sort of octopus Cthulhu monsters that will constantly chase you throughout a room.
We already got past the transition into the Dark Temple where you briefly control one in this weird kind of abstract void moment. No other moments like it in the game, but... yeah.
Sort of a reversal where you actually have to control one to attack Madeline that's sort of sitting in space. And then you control Madeline afterwards.
It's a very interesting little moment there, because I again, there's no other moment like it in the entire game. And so it's just kind of this jarring little abstract thing where suddenly you're controlling an enemy and you see Madeline and you're like, well, I guess I'll go do that.
Yeah. I don't know if this was intentional, but Jose actually discovered that these monsters can actually activate the coins for you.
Yeah.
So you can actually lead one to activate a coin while you go get a second coin and kind of get them both at the same time.
Yeah, if you've got things lined up just right, then it can be a huge time save as you kind of multitask. I believe there's at least one room where you do need to use little demon guys to get a coin, as I think it's a coin that's surrounded by the red brambles.
Believe so. We'll be seeing that shortly.
Yeah, it's a little bit further in, I think. All right, as we're now getting to this giant complex area.
Looks like Jose is... oh, maybe not. I was going to say, there is a way to actually skip this. You actually need to find 2 keys to progress to the next room. There is a method to skip finding those 2 keys, which involves a very precise sort of wave dash to get over a pit of these sort of wiggly spikes.
Yeah, I was reading up about that after my own run, but I was curious if there was something there, because it's such... even if you pull off an alternate route here, there's still so many bits and pieces to this that it would seem like there would have to be something that would cut down time here. And I guess there's a really intricate little hyper dash chain thing you can do that saves you a lot of time there.
Yeah, but it seems like Jose has a route to get both of those keys. I mean, I actually saw that he was running out of stamina a little bit, but wall jumping actually consumes no stamina, so you can kind of wall jump forever.
Yeah.
And gain a little bit of height each time.
So Jose opting to head off to the side with the demon breaking down the door. Because this area, this is something that I was not even aware of until... so I did my run first, because I needed to, physically record this with the other runners, so rather than seeing any of their strats, I did mine before they did theirs. I didn't even know this area was here. I'm sure that, during my own streams, I 100%ed it with strawberries, so I'm sure that it came over here at some point, but yeah, this area has actually got 3 keys available. There's 2 that are next to each other, or that are placed next to each other. You have to go to opposite sides of the complex room for it. But you can instead opt to have that red door get broken down and go for a 3rd key that can save you a bit of time there.
Definitely.
All right, past the 2 key doors for Jose. Looks like I'm about to get myself over into that area. We're now dodging the little demon guys.
Taking shelter in some of those glittery streams of light that the demons can actually get through.
Yes,
those are little protective areas.
It's a nice little bit of help if you're trying to just dodge one at the last second. Duck behind one of those, give yourself a breather, and then continue on.
One other thing about those demons is that, so you saw Rick just jumped off of one of them, just kind of like Oshir, you can get your dash back, same as a platform. But then when they reform a couple seconds later, they actually send that little shockwave that will give you some momentum if you can take advantage of that.
Oh, interesting, yeah. They also don't stay stunned for very long. You can see on Jose's side, they really only stay stunned for about 1.5 seconds, maybe 2 seconds. So in a pinch, it's good to get yourself out of, having to dodge them a ton, but you're not necessarily going to, get much of a breather there.
Definitely. You also see Jose is carrying your mountain climbing compatriot, Theo, who's currently trapped in a crystal. So you actually have to complete the rest of this level with Theo, providing some color commentary himself. As far as how Madeline is doing.
There's some interesting mechanics that go along with, that are kind of unique to this level, where throwing Theo can actually trigger buttons. It can also knock back enemies. I don't think it can actually stun them fully. But I don't know.
I believe if you have Theo land on top of an enemy, it might stun them.
Okay, nice. And obviously he can collect our blue coins here as well to trigger the doors, along with the demon itself.
Yep.
Oh, and yeah, as you can see on the left, that's where the little bramble protected.
You have to go through the bramble
there. There's also a couple things that I noticed that I didn't know my first time through this game, where you can kind of do some tricky maneuvers involving throwing Theo, and wave dashing to catch him, and you can kind of get a lot of extra momentum by kind of pulling a bunch of those together in sequence. It actually can be really useful in the final room of this level, where you're kind of dealing with a constant barrage of this concussive energy that keeps blowing you back. Because you can kind of... it almost feels like iframes a little bit, for at least from that blast sending you backwards. If you catch him at the right moment as that's happening,
right, kind of negates the backwards momentum.
Yeah,
the momentum of the crystal, I guess, going forward.
I think it's the few frames of animation of you picking up the crystal negate any motion that you're getting pushed back. All right, so on my side, I just got the second key. So for mine, I had gone through the right path for the key, which brings you back into the room that you would need to walk through to get to the key on the left side anyway. So that was my path for that, to keep those loops tight. And as we can see too, we've got a lot of this. We've seen these before at this point, but the platforms that respond to dashes. We're seeing them on my side right now. We'll see them on Jose's in a second on the other side of this room. But the last kind of quarter of this level relies on a number of these, where you have to kind of carefully place Theo in order to get the platforms to respond. Oh, and now we're in that.
If you're able to carefully place a demon under one of them, you can actually crush a demon, killing it permanently under one of those platforms as well.
Nice. All right.
So we have our concussive waves that Jose is currently fighting through. A little difficult to get through.
It's a little bit of a pain to deal with it. Whoop, almost. There we go.
The eyeball. There we go.
There it is. And we are done with the Mirror Temple. I believe moving on to Reflection. Alrighty.
I don't know if we probably will not be seeing it, but the setup for Reflection is that Madeline has actually fallen down a good chunk of the mountain, and it kind of needs to work her way back up along with Madeline.
Yes, yeah. I think.
I guess we'll be seeing this first part where we're introduced to the feather mechanic.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of a free-flying. You actually are able to move. I forget the actual thing, but you are able to move in more than 8 directions, which is more than what you're typically doing on the ground. So it's actually very useful to use the joystick rather than the D-pad for using the feather.
Yeah, so I can't speak for either CJ or Jose, but for me, when I play this game, I tend to just use the joystick anyway, which I know is far from optimal when you're trying to set up specific tricks. Something about using the D-pad for a game that's this For some reason, for me, when there's games that are this smooth and this technical, for whatever reason, using a D-pad feels too restrictive to me. Even though it's the same kind of inputs and it's much looser. Nice little quick skip for Jose there.
Yep.
For whatever reason, the joystick just feels more natural, and especially if you're then going to be using these feathers, which have, it seems to be a full 360 of controllable motion. Using the joystick is preferable.
There's some degrees that it's. I want to say it's like 17 or 13 degrees of increments.
Nice.
But I don't exactly remember.
All right, we got Jose coming into the very large room here with the feather. We've got myself with Theo and the crystal.
Skip.
CJ making his way to go meet up with Oshiro and encounter his ghost. Oof, rough death on that one.
And we're going through. Jose is actually hitting a number of these grumbly blocks. Every time you hit one, they kind of grumble and kind of send you to a new place. I believe in the code that is named after one of the developers named Kevin.
Nice.
So the community frequently refers to these as Kevin blocks.
Kevin blocks, nice. All right. And yeah, the trick with those, as you can see, is the side that you hit it from is the side that it then moves towards.
I would say the room that Rick just went through, which has a sideways dash block, is also called the yeet room because there's actually a way to manipulate the momentum of Theo to actually just carry you through that room and honestly partly through the next room.
Nice.
If you go fast enough, you can actually go through a wall of spikes that way.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind
if
of
you ever watch an AGDQ run, you'll see the audience yell yeet as they go through that room.
Nice. So that's I assume that's the result of a similar, at least the passing through the wall is a similar thing that gets used in even as far back as Super Mario Brothers speedruns, where there's like, I was going to say subpixels. That's not right. It's not subpixels. It's more essentially each frame the game is checking for collision based off of a couple different points on both yourself and the like object in front of you. But if you manage to not be touching a wall and then the next frame be completely past the wall, still not touching it, then the game, unless you specifically are very carefully like watching for that, a lot of times you'll be able to just pass through the wall entirely.
Exactly. It's very common. I don't want to say common, but it happens frequently in a number of games where you can kind of skip through walls based on how fast you're going.
Yeah. Usually it's not something most games have to worry about per se, since most games don't have you moving like particularly fast where that would be a problem, but every once in a while it does come up, and it's kind of a huge pain to code, like to fix too.
Yeah, you have to check every single kind of a continuous checkpoint along, like a array or something like that.
Yeah, which can be kind of a hassle for a lot of games. For one like this, it wouldn't be impossible. There's not. I don't think there's enough going on that it would like choke the game to be able to make those calculations. But it's such a rare occurrence that it's probably not really something that would matter. And like you were saying at the start of this, the devs are really fond of like speedrunning and speedrunners. So I'm sure that upon seeing that, they're like, oh, that's cool. All right, let's leave that.
Just kind of left it in.
Yeah. All right. So both Jose and myself in reflection. Jose coming up on the halfway point of the level, and myself very early into it.
Running into those bumpers is always a little rough, but Jose seemed to have recovered from that.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple spots where, because you bounce off directionally based off of where you strike the outside of the bumper. So if you're off by just a little bit, it'll throw you in a way where you're not quite expecting it.
And it does deactivate the bumper for a short moment, so you can't always even rely on coming back to it as well. So you might just fall through it and into spikes.
Yes, in this level, there's an awful lot of that.
Might be skipping a portion of this level of this screen to actually skip several rounds of spikes.
Yes,
through some very small openings.
Yeah, very large S curve of navigation through the spikes. Otherwise, I definitely knew that was an option, but I hadn't practiced that one before, and I was like, I don't know if I want to risk it on a stage, rather a room this large, because if I mess it up, then it means a lot of wasted time. CJ aiming to get that key on the other side of the room. We've got
taking the time.
Jose on the big block.
Between these platforms. Oh, and he overshoots one of the platforms.
Whoop.
Unfortunately. this is I believe Jose's on the final Kevin block before we hit to the sort of climax of Reflection.
Yes. Which carries a pretty substantial gameplay shift from a lot of the rest of the game, where, you know, our second boss battle, and not just that, but also one where you're actively participating in it instead of just passively trying to escape.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, we've got Battlein now shooting, you know, little energy balls. She'll be doing lasers eventually as well, and the only way to get through is to actively make contact with Battlein.
Mm-hmm. And every time it changes the level just a little bit, you see the rocks falling. They will crush you if you're caught under them in the wrong time.
Yes.
But it does change how you actually have to manipulate yourself through the level, so you can dodge those.
Important, it doesn't come up just yet. I mean, it can, but it definitely comes up later. You don't actually have to be dashing in order to damage Battlein. Mm-hmm. You just need to make contact. It'll consider any contact damaging, which is useful because there's a couple spots where it's very difficult to actually make a full dash over to her.
Definitely, and also touching her, which will, you know, signify the next part of the chase, will give you your dash back.
Yes.
So you can actually kind of sort of recover by that way as well.
Which is very useful in some spots where you're kind of being dumped, like there, kind of directly over spikes.
Yeah.
Can be a bit of a double-edged sword, though. If you are a little too hasty on dashing forward, the game definitely sets up a couple trap blocks to crush you if you just, you know, mindlessly dash forward. The one that Jose's on right now, in fact, being a pretty straightforward one.
Definitely.
Right.
We're going through that last feather section for the second half of Reflection as well.
About to meet up with Granny. Continue on forward. Big shout out too. So the music that you're hearing is always going to be whoever's in front. The soundtrack to this game is incredible. The standard soundtrack is, the Farewell DLC soundtrack is like out of this world. It's one of the few video game soundtracks that I've ever like had on my, you know, music devices or whatever. I've had Farewell on there since I played this game the first time. It's so good. There's
fantastic. Shout outs to Lena Rain, I believe is the composer.
There's like a 8 or 9 minute suite done for Farewell. That's really, really good. There's a very high probability that got used for the intro to this video as we were explaining things. It's that or one of the other ones from the DLC, just because it's so good, so good.
Yeah, this battle and boss music is also very, very catchy. Yes. Hearing the hey yeah, going through it all.
The chanting in there, yeah. Definitely brings up a lot of that energy, but it keeps those themes and motifs from earlier in the game too. The like main theme of the game is present in, I think, all of the level tracks. Sometimes it's buried a little bit more than others, but
it's a little buried. And we'll also see in the next level we actually get good remixes of the main theme with the themes of each of the levels as our climbers will be going through the summit.
Because you get the that kind of. Is it reprise or reprise? I've said reprise for so long, but I've heard reprise so many more times.
I have no idea.
Oh, no.
It's kind of like a GIF situation, just kind of switch every so often.
Right. I was so confident for the longest time that it was reprise, and then for over the last, 2 years, I've never heard reprise again. I've heard reprise infinitely more, and I'm like, oh, no. All right, so both...
We have 3 boss battles on the screen right now, actually. We have 2 Battleins and 1 Oshiro.
All pretty tough moments in the game here as we're a little over 42, 43. There's actually a pretty big difference between the time on the clock for Jose and I and the time for CJ, though I guess that's because we've had a couple more mid or intra or inter-level transitions where the timer is not running.
That makes more sense, yeah. And particularly if I'm not sure if CJ's been skipping cutscenes.
He hasn't been as quick on the draw, if only because I had to kind of give him a little guidance on like, you can skip this, skip this.
Right.
Because a couple of them are a little bit less obvious than others. Most of them, it's narrowly
almost
getting
crushed, but got it.
Very close on that. Yeah, there's a couple scenes. In fact, earlier in this stage, I believe we didn't even really mention it, but there's a spot where you have 4 sequential dialogue-based cutscenes with Battlein in a row in the same room. Which is kind of frustrating because all 4 of them have a single jump between them. So you have to skip the cutscene, make your jump, skip the cutscene. Be a little bit
José
frustrating.
Going through the final room, one big long room to get to the end of Battlein, but seems to have made it on the first try.
All right. And skipping that cutscene, José has unlocked the double dash.
Madeline and Battlein, sort of a story situation, is have reconciled some of their differences, and now they are working together to climb up the mountain.
Yes. I'm trying to remember. Battlein essentially is sort of a personification, I guess, of Madeline's kind of self-doubt and kind of like defeatism, I guess.
Definitely. Like the entire time, Madeline has been telling Madeline that you can't do this, you can't make it up, and kind of being a bit more selfish about herself. But and through learning more about each other to become whole.
Yeah. Through part of their discussion that they have in this level and the next, as José is getting to the summit, is kind of that we're learning that the sort of villainous, vibe that Battlein has been giving off has been slightly misconstrued, and that it's more of a defense mechanism than it is, overt antagonism. It's sort of an attempt to protect Madeline by virtue of just like, don't do this thing, you might get hurt. And
now with 2 dashes, there's a number of more movement opportunities that we can actually see.
Absolutely.
Double dashing twice in the air, being able to chain some wave dashes on the ground as well, a bit more easily and a bit more quickly. So it's always going to be an interesting play.
So we'll also see for the summit, like you were saying before, we're going to get kind of musical reimaginings that kind of mix together the main theme of the game along with the themes of those levels, but also the backgrounds that we're seeing here and the just environments and the level mechanics themselves are going to be reminiscent of each of those levels as well. Right now we're getting kind of a remix of Reflection before we move up to get a sort of remix of the Forsaken City at 500 meters.
Yes. It's always going to be interesting to do like a nice tour of Mount Celeste to kind of wrap up this game.
I think I made a joke during my stream that we're not even playing a Mega Man game, but we got surprised by a boss rush in the form of a level rush at the end. Nice little skip.
And there's a number of other paths that lead to other collectibles, other strawberries, crystal hearts, like a cassette that you'll not be seeing, but this is a very sprawling, very large level. You can spend a long time here.
Absolutely. If you get through the whole level and you miss something too, it can take quite a while to actually locate what you're looking for. I want to say this level only so most of the levels, or I guess all of the levels, have kind of chapters to them that you can then select from on the level select if you want to like go looking for strawberries you missed or a cassette where you know where vaguely it is. I want to say for the summit, it just divides them by 500-meter markers.
Yes.
So
and then I believe the summit is also divided up.
Into its
but we'll see that when we get there. They have a couple of number markers.
Yeah. Because when you get to the top, there's 30 flag markers that are there, but I want to say there's 6 distinct rooms to the actual place. They're just very long rooms.
Yeah.
But if you die, you start from the most recent flag marker, not the actual room start, which is a nice.
Definitely makes it easier to sort of retry and make sure you have all your strategies correct.
Yep. All right, so I am now beginning the summit as José is reaching the end of 500 meters on his way to 1,000 meters. CJ in the long corridor with Oshiro's ghost, giving me terrible flashbacks as we get into the 45-50 minute range here.
It's always, it's still like one of like the biggest tests of this game right early on is this long Oshiro room. So
it really is
being put through the paces.
It's interesting. It kind of forms a really good like mid-boss, mid-point for the game as far as challenges go. I would argue that this room is maybe harder than most of the Golden Ridge kind of put together. Like Golden Ridge is more about patience than anything. Whereas this one you have to be like really careful and kind of twitchy with your controls to get out of the way.
Make sure you have all your timing correct.
Yeah. It's nice.
José is now in the old site, dashing through the dream blocks. And we actually saw earlier that if you dash through a deep dream block into a wall, it does automatically kill you, so you have to be careful about your directional inputs on that one.
Yeah, there's an interesting, right near the start of it, there's a very tall dream block that you have to like do a series of diagonal kind of jumps through if you want to get through there correctly. As you can see, you can kind of dash back and forth if you need a second to think, but you do need to kind of eventually figure out, like, all right, what am I actually doing here?
Yeah.
Thankfully, with the double dash, you can also you can also give yourself a second by, using one of your dashes straight up to like reposition yourself along the dream block. So you have a lot of maneuverability there.
Amount of leeway.
All right, so José moving on to the Celestial Resort at 1,500 meters.
Moving on to Golden Ridge.
All right. I believe I am in the Forsaken City portion, 500 meters of the summit. Ah, this room, yeah. And of course, the Celestial Resort immediately starts punishing José. It will punish me as well.
These timings are always just difficult to figure out and get through.
This one in particular, this one blob early into the Celestial Resort portion of the summit had José's number and mine. We both spent a weird amount of time just struggling with this one. I think part of it is you don't have, and there we go, he got past it there.
Using the second dash to make the timing work.
That's the thing, is like if you get the diagonal dash, if you time it just right and get the diagonal there, then you can buy yourself a little time. But if you don't and you kind of go up and then diagonal with it, you don't really have a way to correct yourself in midair. Whoops, so...
And you have the coin protected by these blobs.
Yep.
It's always difficult to figure out the timing to get in and then also back out.
Yeah, José actually resetting the room to give himself that transition timing instead of the death timing. All right.
And on to the final room of the Forsaken Site section of the summit. You have to follow battling along for the ride to get up to the top. Indicating that you need to help each other to actually reach the top of the summit.
Yeah. It's a nice little quick visual signifier that you're coming to the end of a given 500-meter section, too. Because Battlein only shows up in that final room. And when you meet her at the top, that transitions you up to the next portion of the climb. As I reach 1,000 meters, José continues through the 1,500-meter Celestial Resort.
There's another long room to get through. Full of fuzzy floors and fuzzy walls. That means you can't stay there for too long, or else you'll start getting hit with some of those anxiety bubbles.
Now, is there a path underneath the button that's there? I was curious about it, but didn't try it myself.
There is a path. I believe it leads to an extra collectible. I'm not sure which. There's another underground path that's a little bit hidden that José skipped over that does actually lead to a skip into this room, so you don't actually have to go up and then back down.
Oh, interesting. Okay. The spiked room that I'm in was definitely one that I think all three of us had to like take a second to. Cause there's just so many spikes there.
Yeah, and just maneuvering around, you can't touch the floor at all. It's all about managing your dashes.
Yep. And as José reaches 2,000 meters, getting up to Golden Ridge at the summit, while CJ is working through Golden Ridge the first time around. Making my way through.
You get those similar aesthetics both on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a lot more of the kind of brambly spikes going on further up at the summit than there are the first time around. They do a really good job of. I feel like part of the inspiration for the way that the summit works overall is, at some point they came up with a bunch of rooms that they were like, this is just too difficult for that portion of the game. We have to like not destroy them that early. Okay, let's put these all into a thing at the end then. Put all of our most challenging stuff at the end, and we'll kind of lace those together instead.
Yeah. You could definitely say the same for some of the B and C side levels.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Some of those were definitely developed earlier for normal levels, and it's like, we need to tone this down a little bit.
Yeah, needs to be beatable for someone who does not spend an entire day on this one level.
Exactly.
All right, as I'm making my way into the Celestial Resort, prepare for this awful room that I'm about to spend a good minute or so in.
Ooh, on the backswing.
Yep.
Getting caught by the little bubble.
Yeah, it's a real trick trying to get past that one.
José is fighting the wind in that portion of this part of the summit. It seems to be going on to this other longer room where you have to guide this block all the way through.
Yeah.
It's kind of precise, but it looks like got through just fine.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more technical rooms, I think, out of the A sides, where you have to really chain together a handful of things pretty precisely if you want to get through.
Yeah. Another block escort room as well, where you can't even move this one block, so you just have to follow it all the way up. Particularly difficult if you want to get the strawberry as well. You have to kind of go out of your way, but still follow it.
One takes a particularly difficult path through there.
And then with the backdraft wind, is actually I find this one of the more fun rooms just because you're able to like go super fast, have the wind kind of carry you through some of the obstacles.
Generally a lot less dangerous when you've got the backdraft instead of like a headwind coming at you.
José using a hyperdash to skip some of those blocks, but did not end up working in the end.
So, there we go.
Trying again and making it this time.
It's interesting seeing CJ doing the little pilotable blocks at the same time as José right next to him. All right, as José gets to the last room of, was this 2,000 meters, I believe?
I believe so. I don't actually remember the numbers. I just know them.
The worst part,
names.
The worst part too is it's like, okay, so what are the? Actually, I guess it does line up with the actual level numbers because reflection is at 0 meters technically. So
that's true.
Level 1 then goes to 500, and so yeah, 2,500 meters as José is taking a back road through the beginning.
Grab this bubble that will actually take you further into the temple.
Yes.
So, and go through a secret path up top.
And there we go. Drops you back down here. Continuing on. As I'm getting to the end of the Celestial Resort.
There's another timing challenge at the end of Celestial Resort.
Yeah.
I think you actually were able to just barely miss a bubble due to some hitbox weirdness. It seemed like very closely you actually hit one of the fuzzies, but the hitbox didn't overlap just enough. So
there's definitely a couple spots where it's like, did that make sense? Was that supposed to? Okay, I'm not going to ask questions. I'm just going to go with it. As I go up to the 2,000 meters, the Golden Ridge, while José is making his way.
Gets this key. This is also a key where you can hit start over and get to the start of the room, so opposed to climbing down.
Oh, yeah.
Also a very difficult one if you accidentally do that with the Golden Strawberry, because that's all the way through. You have to do Golden Strawberry the entirety of Summit.
Oh, my God.
So it sends you all the way back down to 0 meters.
Jeez, that would be a pretty devastating one.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, so the Golden Strawberries don't appear on your first playthrough, correct?
That's correct. You have to beat all A and B sides for them to pop up, along with the C sides will also pop up then as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, that would definitely good that does not that does not appear on your first playthrough, because that would be a pretty awful, even by accident. At that point, it's like you see if you collect a Golden Strawberry, just immediately take it, like start over. Just don't even.
Yeah. It's not even useful. I would say all the Golden Strawberries except for one are at the beginning of the level, so you have to make that choice.
Yes.
Level 1's Golden Strawberry is actually at the end, and it is a winged strawberry, which we've seen a couple of those. Those strawberries will go away if you dash.
Yeah.
Which requires the level 1 Golden to not only be deathless, but also dashless.
Yes. Huge challenge. I think I spent several hours doing that for a stream once. I did get it. I was very happy that we actually managed to get there. I was
very good
on the brink of giving up literally on the last room of it, but we pulled through. All right, we got José reaching the end of the Mirror Temple at 2,500 meters on his way. Ooh. Oh, that's not so good.
Quite. All the way to the bottom of this very tall room.
This one takes some time to get through in the first place, even just on your first try. All right. As I'm making my way, continuing through the Golden Ridge. I think I'm getting close-ish to the last room of this one as well. Yeah, there we go. Last room of
there's
Golden
last
Ridge. There we go. As José moves on to the final challenge of the summit, 3,000 meters. So this, as we were talking about before, the mechanics of this change a little bit. So the peak at 3,000 meters only really has, I think, 6 distinct rooms, but as you're seeing, José grabbed the 29 flag. Those count down from 30 to 1, and each of those serves as your checkpoint instead. So if you die somewhere rather than going to the start of the room, which are massive at the summit, you just go to the most recent flag that you would hit. So it's
and
very
they're divided
important to
into 3 sort of sections. I believe it's 3. So this section is what's called the downdraft section. So you see the wind on the screen is actually blasting Jose down, which will mess up with your jumps and your up dashes. So you have to be careful about that. Later on, we'll be running into an updraft section where it's almost as if gravity has been turned down a bit. So you're going to be jumping a lot higher. And then the final section is just normal.
All right, up to flag 24. There we go.
And Rick is going through the Mirror Temple, hopping down to get into the bubble to get that last key.
Ooh, a little bit of misfire in the red bubble there.
CJ's still fighting some wind toward the end of Golden Ridge.
Yeah, a lot of wind mechanics as the game goes on.
Always difficult to kind of manage yourself through. A lot of runners consider the wind mechanic to be one of the more annoying mechanics of the game to fight against.
It's just such a limiting factor, and if you're off by even a little bit, then it really does mess up your movement, mechanics.
Definitely.
This overhang at the 20 flag is is sort of a little tricky one, because you need to essentially get into each of these overhangs with 1 dash apiece if you want to make it to the little recharge crystals there.
And just a straight shot up to flag 19 and the updraft section.
Alrighty. I am slowly gaining on Jose over time here, but the question is if it's going to be enough before.
In this room with that Rick just got through, there's actually a way to skip activating those doors.
Really?
Commonly known as door skip. It's one of those things that you must do in order for your run to be quote unquote not actually valid, but it's a skip that doesn't save a lot of time, but it's always just fun to do and always fun to see. People,
nice.
It's a de facto requirement if you ever make it through that room.
Gotcha. Okay. As Jose now halfway through the flags of the peak at 3,000 meters into the 14 flag.
Rick making it right to the summit, to flag 30.
And this is that stamina section I was talking about earlier, where it seems to be barely getting through those spikes. It seems like it's virtually impossible not to be winding down your stamina as you get to that flag. It seems to be like the only real section of the game where that comes into play to that degree.
Just being able to manage that stamina and knowing what you can do while you're still flashing is very important. Again, wall jumps will not take up your stamina. There's actually a way to do a single wall jump without using your stamina called a neutral wall jump that you can actually still gain height with. It is very difficult. It requires some deft joystick maneuvering, so you can keep gaining height while also going back to the wall that you came from. But it is possible.
All right. We're now crossing just past the 1 hour mark. Jose getting to the 9 flag, myself getting to the 24 flag. CJ in the Golden Ridge, making his way closer to the end of that stage. You see after the 22 and the 7 on the flags. So currently
7 is one of the last sections before the final climb to the peak.
Yes. I want to say the 7 or the 6 flag is the last portion of the updraft section too. All right, we got 6 with the feather. Nice little jump up to that cloud from there. As Jose gets to 5, skipping the 5 flag.
There are a couple flags you can skip that actually technically take a little bit more time to kind of get through. But it's the risk of if you die, you have to go back further.
Right, yeah, and I suppose skipping the 5 flag is not the end of the world. It's not exactly difficult to get from 6 to 5 in the first place, but it is a little bit time-consuming. And with the race tightening up as much as it is, you definitely don't want to be sent back more than 1 flag if you can avoid it.
Exactly. So Rick is now hitting flag 16.
16, 15.
And those were really pretty close together.
14, yeah. Some of them are like extremely, extremely tight together. As Jose gets to the number 2 flag.
Final clap. Oh, and takes a short dive, but was able to start pretty quickly afterwards.
I think he's about to the section with the little one block brambles that are kind of there that need to be kind of jumped diagonally around. Oh, I guess he's actually past that already. Here we go to the one flag. The final ascent. Here we go. You hear that music kind of drop out. There's the cold mountain air.
It's always... I'll let this happen. All right, here we go.
The final time
cutscene
for Jose was 1 hour 2:28. Very nice.
18 minutes on that one chapter, but that is a very good time to kind of get through. As I was saying, like one of my best times is around 55 minutes, so around an hour is about what you're looking for.
I'm trying to remember. Jose had mentioned what his best sum of segments was building up to this, and I want to say he was at 10. Oh God, I'm trying to remember. I think he was saying 110, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Was his previous sum of segments?
That's a good savings.
Yeah, a pretty solid PB for him. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think my own sum of segments before this was about 108. And as we're coming down to flag 4, every time I hit flag 4, I start moving right. And I'm like, right, binoculars, stay away.
Yeah, the binoculars are helpful if you don't know the level. They kind of give you a good overview of what you're about to do. But if you know what you're doing, you can just kind of go right ahead.
Yeah, you're just going to skip past it and go.
And unfortunately, with the speedrun we see on Jose's screen, since you're not getting any strawberries, you have kind of a sad pie at the end of it. But a
very
quick
bready pie.
Time to kind of make up for it.
Yeah, I believe when you have all of the strawberries, you have a much more incredible looking pie at the end of it. Oh.
Yeah, it looks very delicious. If you see the cutscene, also the people do actually comment on how many strawberries you've collected, so
nice.
It's a little bit sad at the end when people are like, "I've only got 0 strawberries." What?
Oh my goodness! Here we go. Myself getting up to the 1 flag. Our final ascent here as well. Getting that music dropping in again. There we go. Final time of, once it comes up, 104.07, a little under 104.08.
Only a minute and a half difference right there.
So while setting this up, I had to do this kind of this progress tracker in the middle, and it gave me really easy access to all of the data of our progress through these levels. So, I mean, I'll pull something up in a second here, but for the time being, here's our comparisons there. I forget which level I actually got a strawberry on. I got it completely by accident. You can see our kind of differences in the levels here. The first half of the game, as you can see, those first 3 levels, it definitely was Jose making up tons of time. Over 40 seconds in Forsaken City, which I think is just that those hyper dashes are just way easier to chain together there than they are in a lot of the later levels that are a bit more busy. But the back half, you can see that I was catching up a bit. We got a kind of chart here of Jose's lead over the course of the game, over the course of real time here. At one point, getting just over a 4-minute lead shortly after Celestial Resort, which was kind of a pain, but steadily tightening that up. You can even see the progress of what room we were in. That it's a very similar chart all the way up there.
Yeah,
it was a really tight race.
There was a bit of a gap, but everything was kind of steady all the way up to the summit.
Well, so one thing that I was kind of curious about while I was putting this together was, okay, I had that one room in the Celestial Resort that went really badly. I spent about 2 minutes in that one room, which is tragic. So I was curious, and we've got up on the screen now, so these are not synced the way they were before. This was if that room got removed entirely, what the comparison of these would be. Obviously, this is not scientific or anything. This is more just for my own amusement while I was doing this, because throughout the course of the games, we've had so many razor-thin margins of victory in so many of these events. Some of the races have been fractions of a second. Some of the score-based ones have literally come down to 10. I think the very first event was Ski Free, which came down to a margin of less than 1% between.
Yeah, that was very close.
First and second. The curling event came down to literally a double tiebreaker. So lots and lots of these super thin margins. And so I thought it'd be kind of neat to see like how these runs compare if that room got deleted out of my run, which obviously is not a fair comparison. This is totally for yucks and giggles. Meanwhile, CJ making his way through the Golden Ridge here. The room that he was there was a room that he was kind of stuck in that was like that moving block that you have to drop down to hit a button, then grab it again through a bubble. That one's a weirdly intricate room even for that stage of the game. You really have to have like tight platforming there.
Yeah, it's very delicate to execute, and then even just to know kind of what to do there as well.
Yeah.
Definitely, like if you're doing a blind run through of that, knowing what blocks you can move and what blocks you can't move and what directions they can move, it's a little bit cryptic. You kind of have to get a feel for that. So
yeah, especially seeing those green the green like trigger buttons essentially for them too, because that's like that's like the big piece of like whether you can control them or not. And yeah, you can even see just here between the two runs here as Jose is getting to flag 19 as I'm getting to flag 21, but you can see that our time differences are off by like a minute and a half or so. And I believe, the audio that you'll be hearing right now is coming from CJ's run, since his is the one that's actually like real and active for the time being. Yeah, that downdraft is a pain. It really does impact strongly how well you're able to like navigate and stuff.
You almost have to have two sort of ideas in your brain of how the dash works. One with a normal, no wind, and one how it works with downdraft, and I guess a third with the updraft as well, because that does send you a lot higher as you kind of do that. So that could send you into spikes or into just the wrong direction.
And like at least with the updraft, that's a pretty familiar mechanic physics-wise in a lot of games. Like if you do, so Super Mario Land 2, for example, has the space zone, and a million video games all have underwater levels where you have those similar kind of floaty controls. But it's really uncommon to have a game where you have like increased gravity. So it's definitely like an extra challenge that is not as common in games. It can take a little bit more getting used to, kind of in the moment there.
Increased gravity with the additional precision of having it be the last level as well.
Yeah, absolutely, So it's already a very challenging level to start with, and you're dealing with a new mechanic that you have not seen at any point in the game. It's definitely an extra little bit of challenge there. Granted, that's kind of this game's bread and butter. The Farewell DLC also introduces some new mechanics and movement tech and stuff, even to like non-speedrunners and like kind of amateur players in that like bonus level there.
Yeah. And it's great that game also like teaches you some of those things as well. I will say, if you play some of the B-sides or the C-sides, there's that little bird that taught you how to dash will also teach you some of those other tricks, like a wall bounce where you kind of dash near a wall and kind of use that momentum to go up the wall.
Oh yeah.
As well as the hyper dash kind of comes from Farewell, and some of the, I believe, another momentum dash you actually learn at the very last level of the game, 7C, Summit C. Well, actually, no, not Summit, Core, sorry. The Core level, which we actually are not seeing today, since that's technically part of, quote-unquote post-game.
Yeah, you would also have to collect at least 4 hearts to get in there, which seemed like a little bit too much of a distraction.
There is a speedrunning category where you need to collect all of the hearts. That has a slightly different, as you might imagine, different routing situation.
Absolutely, yeah.
But that does include Core as well. All hearts or all strawberries also. I believe Core has a couple strawberries as well.
Nice. As you can see, we're now at a point where Jose and I are basically like right on top of each other.
Yeah, it's neck and neck. Or at least neck and neck visually. The timer's a little bit
the timers are obviously off by, it looks like about a minute 40 from each other. And this also comes from deleting the room, not... I guess I could have also done one that was like, if just the last pass through was the one that was there as well. As we get near to flag number 2, and we both take a fall at literally the same exact time. Couldn't be much more lined up as we get to the last two flags.
Guys,
here.
The Mirror Temple was 2 levels ago.
Yeah. It certainly feels like a mirror match now. As Jose gets to flag 1, then I get to flag 1.
It's very close.
So
there's a particular embarrassment if you're on flag 1, you end up taking a dive on one of these spikes.
Oh yeah.
It's like the music fades out and the climax is right there, and then you just kind of like push, and you have to go back down a little bit.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh come on. But yeah, I was curious about how those lined up, minus like my absolute worst room in here, and like the difference between the two like timing finishes there, like in this real time version of it, like so the menu would obviously change things too, but less than a second and a half between the two in terms of timing there. Like Jose put up an awesome time, huge PB for him as well, like almost 10 minutes of PB. He was saying that like and similar to myself, both of us were talking about after his run that like we're gonna keep playing around with this. We're at least gonna try to get our times down under an hour on our own time, just because the game is tons of fun. And
yeah, that's definitely a good goal. That's where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah,
we'll be seeing you all on the speedrun.com leaderboards as well.
Yeah, I hope so. Funny enough, with the time that I got and the time that Jose got, we'd both be somewhere in the realm of number 2200 or so.
Yeah, the numbers have definitely been. This is a very popular game, and it's only been growing ever since. I believe with my sub-hour run, I was in like the 500s when I submitted it in 2018, and I believe now I'm in like the high thousands. So here we go.
Well, so we're going to kind of fade out from the race at this point, since CJ is the only one that's still running, but we can get to our final standings for the race. Jose for Tierra de los Hermanos Hook taking the gold with 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 28 seconds. Myself grabbing the silver for Imperium Ludum with 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 7 seconds. And CJ for Daisy Baby Bitch Territory taking the bronze at 3 hours, 46 minutes, 23 seconds. Not a bad time for a completely blind run of this game. I think I took longer when I was streaming mine, so I certainly can't knock him for a time like that on his first go.
For a completely blind one, that's totally great. And then even like 1 or 2 more runs of practice will bring that down a lot.
Absolutely, yeah. We were talking about it after his run, and he was saying that like if I did it again, I could probably do it in under 3 hours, even just doing a second run now. It's like, yeah, oh, absolutely. Like I could see him knocking a full hour off of this on a second attempt for sure,
easily.
And he had never played the game. He was kind of unsure about like whether he wanted to like try to practice or just go in totally blind just for kind of a fun run. And afterwards he was like, yeah, I might pick up this game. And I was like, sweet, awesome. That's what I want to hear.
Definitely way to get into it.
Exactly. I'm glad that everyone like enjoyed themselves with it. And so this was kind of a really important one for the overall standings here, as Tierra de los Hermanos Hook with this final gold clinch the top position for the games with 7 gold, 3 silver, and 3 bronze. Imperium Ludum taking second overall with 6 gold, 6 silver, and 3 bronze. Daisy Baby Bitch Territory in third with 2 gold, 3 silver, 5 bronze. And You Betcha Stan in the back of the pack with 1 gold, 4 silver, 5 bronze. Everybody walking away with golds, which is always good. For the individual medal counts, we've got myself at the top with 6 golds and 4 silvers. Jeff with 2 gold, 2 silver, 1 bronze. Dave with 2 gold, 1 silver, 1 bronze. And Peter with 2 golds. We have a handful of folks with 1 gold as well. CJ with a gold, a silver, 2 bronze. Diego with 1 gold and 2 bronze. Felice with 1 gold, 1 bronze. Jose also with 1 gold earned here, as well as 1 bronze. And below that we've got John with 4 silver, 3 bronze. Lindsay with 2 silver, 2 bronze. Sarah with 1 silver, 2 bronze, and Nick with 1 silver and 1 bronze. Special shout out to myself, to Jeff, to Diego, and to Sarah as the only folks who we actually managed to medal in every event that we participated in. So a perfect 100 for those 4 competitors. I especially want to thank all of the competitors that we just listed off there. Sarah and Nick, John, Diego, CJ, Felice, Lindsay, Jeff, Peter, Dave, and Jose, as well as all the commentators that we've had over the course of this series of the games, the second games, in fact. So a big shout out to 𝗷𝗚𝗏, to C-Dude, to Nintendo Fangirl, Alex Rosenberg, That Andy Guy, Teddy, aka Evil Hippie, Max and Lynn from Game Face, Ian from Born Losers Gaming, Anthony and Justin over at Retro Roulette, Ape Arcade, and Steve, you as well. And Jeff, who commentated for our very first event for this on top of that. It's been a hell of a ride. Do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
Yeah, I just want to say that, it's been a great run from all of the competitors. It's been great to see, all of the skills and all of the different events and all of the, how close all of these events were, as we were talking about earlier. It's been a lot of fun to see. It's been great to be a part of this. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining me for this. I was for Sonic Mania, I kind of commentated that one out of necessity just because it was such a long event and it was sort of last minute, and 2 or 3 people I was chatting up about it didn't really think that they'd be able to do it with the time that was available to them for Sonic Mania. So this time around, I was like, I need to figure out somebody for Celeste, like, way ahead of time on this. And I was like, thinking about it for a while. I'm like, you know what? Celeste comes up in the D-pad Discord, relatively frequently, not like all the time, but it does come up from time to time. And I was like, do I even know anyone outside of our own circle who talks about Celeste like at all? And the first one was like, no, actually, wait a minute. Okay, then we got to go inward for this. And as soon as I was thinking about that, I was like, okay, Steve is the obvious choice for a commentator on this. He knows this game like the back of his hand, and he's definitely going to have like solid knowledge of the game, the strats, the routes, and all of the things that like make this game really tick. So I really appreciate you joining me for this.
Of course, it's been a lot of fun.
Sweet. Well, with that, that is going to be the end of the games, and I believe that means we're going to be needing to throw this over to our closing ceremony. So we'll get right to that.
Getting too cold for this shit.